Thank you, everyone. Okay, so this is a revolution. No, it's not about this. Okay, thank you, Christian, for this nice introduction. So I'm very pleased to see you. Now it's 3 years after or 4 years after my PhD, because you were one of the members of the committee members. So it's a real pleasure, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you, Corsica and University of Marseille. So we will go through an important domain, important new field in CT. It's not so new, you will see, but it's really important, spectral CT imaging. We'll see that more and more we are talking about this, and this course will be about technologies you will see along the presentation. So first of all, I'm working in Lyon. The research environment enables to have a clinical spectral CT here in that hospital. So this is the H4 hospital, where I'm working as a radiologist for cardiovascular and thoracic imaging. But our research environment enables also to work on a research animal platform using the first and the only spectral photon counting CT developed in collaboration with Philips. So as Christian said, we got this equipment in 2015 thanks to a European H2020 project. And since then, we had many collaborators from the clinical to the preclinical field. And as a matter of fact, one of the members of the team I'm here, and I'm really glad to show the research environment, to explain where we came from and where we are going. So the first question: who wants to save patients' life? Yeah. Okay. Good. That's good. So you need to explain basic principles of spectral CT imaging to save patient life. Of course, I'm kidding, but you need to have the why in your scope. We're going to see how to differentiate between dual and multi-energy CT. So dual energy in the clinical field, it is already existing since more than 15 years. Multi-energy CT is starting to be commercialized in the clinical field. So this is past, present, but also future technology. We're going to see how to understand the clinical implication. So here it's really important as a biomedical engineer to keep working on new development and also be able to identify and discover new applications. And I think many of you said 10 years ago that CT is boring, and I'm quoting Professor Matthias Zuber, but you will see that it's not so boring, and it will improve the current state of care, and this is how to do that. So really short overview of X-rays. Yesterday you had a really nice, from what I heard, course on this field. But since 1895, the X-rays have completely changed the medical care, the state of the care of the patients, and from 2D images to 3D images, it has changed the way we are diagnosing disease, the way we are treating, the way we are following disease, the way we are monitoring the treatment, and so on. And it's even more important. We are expecting in the USA more than 300 million CT per year in 2030. It's huge. So here it's a 2D, of course, image of the wives of William Röntgen, but 3D, as everybody knows, is showing the distribution of the linear attenuation coefficient of the tissue, which is important to delineate the tissue. This is why we are using CT. We are using CT for the morphologic aspect. However, this field is lacking from important advantages. Conventional CT, or this field, will, because of the energy integrated detectors, and we will go through the architecture of the detector, we lost the energy dependent information of the tissues. That means that you're going to lack of contrast within your image. So see as this image, this is a phantom with insert. So it's a grayscale value. There is complete lack of tissue type specific image. This is here two inserts with the same, when you looked at with the eyes, you see that you have the same grayscale value. It's not possible to differentiate then, and nevertheless you have a differentiation in terms of Hounsfield units. So here there is a lack of contrast between these two inserts. The other important fact is limitation is that these images are not tissue type specific. So that means that within this insert, despite the fact that different atoms are in each insert, you will end up with the same attenuation value here, which is completely a lack of specificity. And finally, there will be also a lack of absolute quantification. That means that this insert, if you change the X-ray source, if you change the beam hardening, if you change the patient attenuation, you will end up with a different attenuation values, which is completely wrong in terms of absolute quantification. So these limitations are important in CT, and they prevent from the functional assessment of disease and from more in-depth understanding of disease. And that's why we need a new field in that area. And by new field, I will introduce you the spectral CT imaging, not like this grayscale value image. I will introduce spectral CT imaging like a multiparametric imaging. Here, this is just an illustration. You see, these inserts are composed of different materials, from calcium, iodine, bone, and other structures. While you cannot differentiate them because of the non-specific image, you can have images that will highlight the contrast, or that will even more not show some insert because of their specific composition and a specific linear attenuation coefficient. So this is spectral CT imaging, is to provide more contrast in the CT field imaging in order to increase the contrast, to propose a characterization of some tissue, and to boost and push the limits of conventional CT. So how can you do that currently? You have, so this is a really simple illustration of the conventional CT. You have spectrum, X-ray spectrum transmitted through the patient, and at the end you end up with a global attenuation, which is a grayscale pixel value image based on the architecture and behavior of these detectors. We will talk about them after. So to have more information, you have the possibility to go through dual energy CT technology. Dual energy CT technology, the main point here is that you are using the same detectors and conventional CT, but instead of having one information, one global attenuation of the tissue, you will end up with two global attenuation of a tissue. With different energy peak, we will see that you will have a global attenuation at a low energy peak and a high energy peak. So you have two ways to do that, and it's mainly you have two technology that can provide this type of spectral discrimination. You have either three vendors that provide a dual source at the acquisition. You are spinning around the patient maybe 2 times sometimes with different energy peak, one low energy X-ray tube and one high energy X-ray tube. Or you have another constructor that is providing not at the acquisition dual energy, but at the detection. You will have 2 layers of detectors with different compounds that discriminate between the low energy and the high energy. We will see that this is the key for providing a more understanding of the attenuation between the X-rays and the tissue. And as everybody knows, I guess here, that in CT, using the energy in the energies, in the clinical energies, you will end up with photoelectric and Compton effect. But now, what is the real breakthrough in this area, in spectral CT imaging? It will be not a change in terms of detection here or acquisition. It will be a change in the chain detection, i.e. in terms of detectors. So this is the groundbreaking technology that I will also explain, that is changing from a sampling of two energy windows here to an extended energy windows number from 4 to 8 sometimes. And you will see that it gives an important power in terms of spectral discrimination, pushing one more time the limitation of conventional CT. Okay, so about principles. All is relying in this equation from Alvarez and Markowski in 1976. The global attenuation is the sum of the photoelectric and Compton effect. So when you, this equation can be also described, and there is an important dependence on the energy by the function, photoelectric function and Compton function. But what is missing in your image is the coefficient absorption, photoelectric and Compton, these two alpha. And having in using dual energy CT can in fact resolve this equation with two unknown numbers, because you have on the first row you have global attenuation at low energy. Usually you use an energy X-ray tube from 40 to 80 keV to get global attenuation around 50 keV, or it depends on the X-ray source geometry. And you will have also a global attenuation at higher energy, and with this you will end up with your unknown, which will be the key in order to generate tissue attenuation at different energies. We're going to talk about virtual monoenergetic imaging. We also, you can generate specific images of tissue and contrast agent, and you will see that this is also a key for providing functional imaging into the conventional CT, because I said that CT is only morphology, but you will see that we can push towards functional imaging, what TEP or nuclear imaging is doing. And at the end, you also can generate specific image of chemical and physical composition of tissue. And this is interesting because as a bioengineer, you want to use this photoelectric and Compton effect in order to create some new application and some new images. And I have an example. And yesterday I talked to Anaïs, who is working with Nice. She's working with the proton therapy. And it is interesting because you will see that engineers from the spectral CT imaging field, they develop the electron density maps until proton therapy said, okay, we need that. We need to plan the noise stopping power for this area. So what I mean is that there are many possibilities in terms of development when you know physics, and of course better than me. Okay, so let's go through principle. Monoenergetic images can be like what you get in synchrotron, in the beamline, for example. But anyway, it's what you get with this type of image is specific, is an attenuation at one energy. So you see here that there is the curve, the attenuation curve of a compound, iodine and calcium, or the linear attenuation coefficient of a compound, which is the sum of the photoelectric effect, mainly predominant at low energy, and Compton effect, which is mainly constant at the energy in clinical routine. And here you see that once you resolve these unknown numbers, it will be easy to then reconstruct at a specific energy from 40 to 200 keV, for example, your image. And you see the change in terms of image. You are boosting here the attenuation of a compound, which is here is the blood plus iodine. And you are, while increasing the energy, decreasing the attenuation of this compound. And here, clearly, you are simulating an attenuation with a more predominant photoelectric effect than what you could do with the conventional CTs. Because what I did not say here is that when you use conventional CT with the polychromatic X-ray from 40 to 120 keV, you end up with an image that will be an attenuation around the average beam energy, around 70 keV. So with conventional CT, you will end up with only one image, which is lacking from attenuation or from contrast, while with 40 keV here, you will end up with an iodine boost or a boost of all the tissues with a positive photoelectric ratio, while with high energy, you will end up with lower attenuation in all the parts you have iodine, for example. So you can even more simulate a non-contrast imaging. And this is important. And this type of images, I'm using them since 2017 each day for each patient to look for myocardial infarction, myocarditis, and so on and so on. So this is not about dream. This is today about clinical routine. So we talk about this equation, and this equation is can be written as a sum of, in the image, of two basis linear coefficient attenuation. And in terms of basis, I will here talk about iodine and water. Why? Because we are mainly composed of water. This is the first basis. And in CT, you are mainly using iodinity to increase the attenuation of your tissues. That's why you have two bases, iodine and water. And you will see after, when we talk about projection of tissue within each basis, you will see that these bases are really far from linear coefficient attenuation very different, which is important in terms of material decomposition of tissue. So in this equation, the only unknown is the concentration of iodine and concentration of water, but you could write this equation not only with iodine, but with acid uric and calcium. And in fact, as a biomedical engineer, you have to ask the user and to look for what he needs in your image. For example, in Lausanne, there is a guy, he's only working in uricemic patients. That means that they have accumulation, deposition of acid uric, and he doesn't need any iodine in the material decomposition. He needs not water, he needs calcium and acid uric. And so you need to also develop in that way. So anyway, the principle of this material decomposition process is to decompose your voxel, your image, between two material bases, which are somehow representative of the photoelectric and Compton effect, but not quite right. So let's look at how it goes in image. So this patient had a thorax, a lung CT angiography. That means that we inject the iodine in the pulmonary arteries. And you see that on the left-hand side, you have an image with some signals, concentration that is representing or close to the linear coefficient attenuation of iodine, while on the right-hand side, you will see voxel or tissues with the close linear coefficient attenuation of water. And what you see here is you have a clear signal within the pulmonary arteries in favor of iodine, while on the right side, you don't have iodine anymore. So here, the material decomposition works well, I mean, differentiating between those two bases. But look for the wrong signal here. Do you see the wrong signal? You should look for a tissue that is in both images. Do you see you have a structure that is here and here. Look, you see? The bone. The bone are in both images. We'll see why it is in both images. But nevertheless, a comment. As a user here, I don't care about the bone because bones are not in my lung and I need here information about the lung. But it could be a real limitation when it comes to calcification, look within the aorta, because you see on both sides, which is a wrong material decomposition. So why? Let's look at this. So you see, it's the way we are geometrically illustrating the projection of one tissue in one in the basis images. So you have the profile of a low low linear attenuation coefficient tissue, and here a high. So it's basically with a really high positive ratio, photoelectric ratio, and here a low. So what you have here is the dependence on the energy. And as a matter of fact, you have this line, will we be used to project one tissue on either iodine here or water. So let me show you an example. You see this case. This case in conventional image, in conventional image, will appear as grayscale. This one, it could be misdiagnosed as calcification or high dense materials. So you need to put it in some projection basis, and you see that the way we project this basis is to draw parallel lines to the material attenuation profile here and here. And at the end, you will end up with, for this tissue, which is mainly close to the iodine, to a high signal in the iodine and to a low signal, but not negative, in the water image. When it comes to a low photoelectric ratio or low linear coefficient attenuation tissue, you will end up with a low signal in the iodine image, but a high signal in the water image. So you see that despite some physical composition close to water, you will always have a contamination in the other bases, which is a lack of clearly specificity. And what happens with calcium? When you looked at the Z atomic number of calcium, which is around 22, and the iodine, which is around 55, you see that calcium will end up as an intermediate tissue, i.e. Half of its composition or concentration will end up on the iodine map, and half will be on the water map. So to increase the contrast of this, maybe we can change finally the model, the projection domain, and with the same here tissue type like calcium, if you use the material attenuation like acid uric and iodine, you will change your projection and end up with a different contrast in your image in order to increase at the end the contrast. So this material decomposition process used in spectroscopy imaging is limited, but it can offer also different solutions. And it can offer different solutions that are more and more developed. They still need to be validated. And one of these images could be this one. It's an image of the Z effective, so it's the atomic number in each voxel. And as a user, I don't understand well, or I don't know I'm not sorry. I don't understand well the number and so on, and I don't need it, because what I need here is to see some different contrasts. You see, this is the same patient, but the difference between them is that you see clearly the contrast between this part of the lung and this part of the lung. And this is important. Spectroscopy imaging is revealing some new contrast, while with this electronic density, you will end up with the electronic density in each voxel, but you will not show some contrast in the lung. So there is important new developments. And this development at the end could be summed up as these images, but not only, it's not exhaustive. And you could think about other images that can be developed if you know the physics. So see what spectroscopy imaging is offering today. Is offering a multi-parametric imaging modality. I talk about the virtual monoenergetic images from 40 to 200 keV. I talk about two material basis images from iodine and water, for example, and from Z effective electronic density, and at the end we will talk about color cage imaging. Okay, now let's talk about technology. So technology, we said that conventional CT and dual energy CT are based on energy integrated detectors. So these detectors are losing the energy-dependent information of the tissue because all the photons will be integrated. You see that it is, we'll see after, so the main point here is that these detectors are equipping the current conventional and dual energy CT systems. These detectors are providing an indirect conversion of an incoming X-ray photons. Within the detector pixel, you will have a conversion in visible lights that will be converted after by the photodiode and used as a signal. The main point here is that you have a reflector between or layer, a thin layer between each pixel detectors which will increase the gap between each pixel detectors, leading by a loss of spatial resolution. So this is an important point. The important point also of these detectors is that they are integrating all the photons, losing the energy-dependent information we talk about. And also, this is important, these pixel detectors are hard to design as small pixels. So usually, current AEDs are of a size around 1 millimeter square. Surface area around 1 millimeter square. That means that if you put a patient of the ESO center and an X-ray tube here with a zooming factor around 1.3, you will end up with a spatial resolution that won't go lower than 600 to 700 micron. So this is an important limitation, especially when you talk about coronary artery, because coronary arteries are really small, like 2 millimeters sometimes. That means that in 2 millimeters you will have very low number of pixels. So you need for this task and for many tasks to increase the spatial resolution. Anyway, with energy integrated detectors, you can perform a material decomposition of the photoelectric and Compton effect. We saw with dual energy CT. You use two different X-ray spectrum. You decompose and use the Alvarez and Markovsky's equations to calculate the photoelectric and Compton effect. But, and this is important, you cannot perform more than 2 energy windows sampling of the transmitted spectrum, which will be really limitation for expanding the material decomposition process, and that will be the interest for cage imaging after. And also, you will have for dual energy and also as well for conventional CT, the limitation of these detectors. It is limited in spatial resolution, around 700 micron. It is limited by the dose efficiency induced by the indirect conversion, and also by the absence of energy resolving capabilities. So what is energy resolving capabilities and how can we achieve that? So this new detectors called photon counting detectors that are small compounds, semiconductors, that can directly convert the incoming X-ray photons into the electronic charge. So it is important because they have this energy resolving capabilities. They count the energy of each photon. In a pixel detectors, more than 6 million photons per millimeter square per second are hitting a pixel detector. So these detectors will take care of the energy of each photons with some spectral distortion, but anyway, they will take in charge this spectral, energy resolving this aspect in order to we'll see to use it as a more detailed description of the X-ray spectrum. Before that, I want to highlight the fact that you don't have anymore the thin layer around each pixel detector, because you don't have any more propagation of visible lights, so you don't need to prevent from cross-contamination. And there is one aspect here that you can see here, is that the surface of the pixel detector is much smaller than the energy integrated detectors because of many aspects. And I will say that one of the most important aspects is that by decreasing the size of the pixel detector, you decrease the the number of photons hitting the numbers of photons, which is more efficient in terms of count rate capabilities. So these detectors are a groundbreaking technology because they can provide new advantages, and the advantages, first of all, is to improve the spatial resolution. You see an energy integrated detectors here with standard mode, high resolution mode, where you find the layers between each pixel detectors. And when it comes to sometimes increase the spatial resolution of your city, you have some grid that can split or at least perform a much smaller pixel size, but still you have the septums that are decreasing the spatial resolution, while with SPCT, spectral photocounting CT, you don't need any layer around pixel detectors, which will end up by a standard resolution mode much higher than ultra high resolution with conventional CT. So to show you the impact on spatial resolution, I choose to show some results using a metric, a specific metric used for CT, which is called task-based metrics. So these metrics are interesting because they will show you in the frequency domain the impact on the task transfer function and then on the noise power spectrum. So we start. So this is the phantom from the American College of Radiology. This is a phantom that provides an homogeneous part here to assess the noise. And also you have a part with a different insert, which will be important for measuring the task transfer function, which is a modulation task function, but applied for a specific contrast. So I will show you first the impact on spatial resolution for this insert. So this insert is made of polyethylene insert. What is interesting here as a user is this is the difference in contrast between the polyethylene insert and the background. And this contrast here is simulating a low contrast task, such as a nodule in my lung. So you see that we are using a phantom to simulate contrast in the body and to check for or to look for or evaluate the impact on spatial resolution. So this phantom we scan with the photocounting CT, which is a red curve, and with a standard CT, which is a black curve with somehow similar acquisition and reconstruction parameters. It's not so easy to have the same acquisition and reconstruction parameters because it's of course not the same detection chain. Anyway, so what you see here is the task transfer function, which is transform Fourier of the edge spreads function in this insert between the background and the insert. And what you see here, this is important in terms of shifting the frequency of the task transfer function towards high frequency, which will convey more spatial resolution. It's true for 50%, but it's also true for 50%, but it's also true for 10% of the task transfer function. And at the end, you have a cutoff in terms of cutoff much higher than conventional CT. So first aspect, in spatial resolution, you increased in this experimental setup by 2 times the task transfer function for a particular clinical task. And in my work, I am interested more in simulating a contrast of a lung lesion, for example, a low contrast lesion or a high contrast lesion, in order to more understand the clinical application. Because usually for a CT, we use the modulation transfer function that is calculated on a thin guide wire of 100 micron, which usually is of really high contrast. Here, it's a contrast of a clinical task. So now, even more easy for me as a radiologist, and it is the work of the medical physicist, is to use this my laser is to use this phantom. So this phantom is a pair of lines phantom. This pair of line phantoms allows you to evaluate the image quality of lines from 12 to 19. And what you see here with this photo counting city, so it's photo counting city from Matt Danielson. He's a professor of physics in Sweden, and he has developed his own photo counting detector based on silicium semiconductor. And what you see here is that he provided a much higher spatial resolution in comparison to standard CT. You can see up to 19 pair of line per centimeters. And what is interesting is that even you can go even higher than 19 towards 24, and you can also increase the spatial resolution with half of the dose, half of the X-ray dose. So that means that you are increasing the spatial resolution even with lower radiation dose. So it's a huge impact in clinical imaging because you're going to see earlier the disease and with less radiation dose burden. So look at this modulation transfer function, which is our system with also the pair of lines here, where you can see in that experimental setup up to 28 pair of line of centimeter, which corresponds to an object of 180 micron. So it's 2 to 3 times even more than conventional CT. Here it's a Siemens system back in 2019 with a different setup, and also the cutoff of photo counting CT is improved. Okay, so spatial resolution, it's a huge, huge advantage, and I will say that it is an incremental advantage. It's not a disruptive or groundbreaking. Now we're going to talk about the most important and interesting part. It is the groundbreaking aspect of these detectors. So these detectors, we said that they were semiconductors. So they are the pixelated anodes are receiving a photon. The photon will be the energy, the signal will be amplified. Then there will be in the system, electronic system, the ASIC, there will be a shape, not modifier, but a shape designer, a shape, will be then compare and put in different counters. So the signal of the photons will be classified into different energy bins. And this is important because energy integrated detectors did not allow any specific energy resolving capabilities. In that setup, each photons from the low to the high energy will be counted, this energy will be compared and put it in energy windows. And this energy windows will be the key for improving the contrast resolution. How? First, with a real easy, I'll say real easy for me to understand, but a really nice aspect. This is the fact that these bins will allow to classify the really low energies below 30 keV, which will correspond to the electronic noise. That means that these detectors, by classifying the energies, will be used to suppress the electronic noise. So at the end, you will of course increase decrease your noise in the image. That will increase the contrast. So how does it behave on noise? So now let's talk about the noise power spectrum. So it's the evaluation of the noise within the spatial frequency domain. You see that we set up different square areas in order to have a large area of measurements. So I'm showing here so just a point, this metric have been widely validated by Samei from the University of Duke, but also from Verdun in the University of Lausanne. Here you see the impact on the noise. So you see two graphs. On the left side, this is the dual layer CT we are using in clinical routine, and the spectral photocounting CT. Those CT are from the same manufacturer. The scale is the same. the y and the x-axis is the same. You have the spatial frequency and you have the NPS here. So what you can see first is that with the same reconstruction parameters, let's take FBP, filter back projection, which is the linear and the stationary algorithm of reconstruction here. So you see that first you decrease, really importantly, the noise using spectral photocounting CT. So this is the first point. You decrease the noise by more than 40% when you take all the reconstruction parameters. So what is about the other reconstruction parameters? The blue lines and so on. So I'm sorry, FBP was on the top. FBP is the more noisier and he's on the top. Then IDOS 1 to IDOS 11, it's an iterative reconstruction. Usually iterative reconstruction is non-stationary, non-linearity. That's why we are using this metric, task-based metric. But the fact is that here you have, first point, you have a decrease of all the images independent dependent from the level of IDOS. The more you are using iterative, the more you are decreasing the noise for each setup, but still you are keeping the difference between dual energy and spectral photocounting CT due to the difference in terms of chain detection. But also you are doing one thing important, is that you are shifting the peak of the noise. You see the peak of the noise is around 0.4, 0.5, while here it's around 0.8, 0.9. So you are shifting the noise, which will convey also the spatial resolution capabilities of your detector. So by changing also the noise frequency, you also allow to use now even more higher spatial resolution. So let's take an example. I like this one because it's for coronary artery disease. It's to look for plaque, which are some plaque really problematic. And this is the main cause of myocardial infarction, the unstable plaque. And what is interesting in the setup is that we compare for coronary plaque imaging, and this is the noise here. Photocounting CT with ultra high resolution parameters, so that means resolution for coronary arteries, small coronary artery disease, in comparison to high resolution with dual energy CT. And what you see here is clearly what we talked before, a huge important decrease of the noise, and also an important shift of the noise towards a higher frequency. So the impact is real on the noise, on the spatial resolution. So here it's an anthropomorphic phantom. It's a Japanese anthropomorphic phantom, where you see the difference between standard CT using filter back projection and spectral CT, where you see that you have less noise, particularly on the top and the bottom. On the top, you have the shoulder, you have a lot of attenuation that increase the noise, that increase the beam hardening, and here also as well, where you have the spleen and the liver. And this is important because usually for smoker-related lesions, you have the cancer in the top, and for fibrosis, you have fibrosis in the lower part of the lung. So you see that these are in really important areas, and that means that spectral photocounting CT can reduce the dose and improve the image quality for this. Okay, so even let's talk about technology one more time. We talk about spatial resolution, electronic noise. Now we are going to talk about the way the detectors can improve the contrast. You see here the optimal weight of tissue, the black curve, and you see calcium attenuation coefficient and water, the dot line. What is interesting here is that with energy integrated detectors, you have a low ponderation. You have what we call the linear ponderation of the energy of the photons. I mean, the low photons are less weighted than the high energy photons. That means that you are somehow losing some photoelectric effect here in that point. So you will end up with a contrast. But when it comes to a constant weighting allowed by the photon-counting detectors, because each photon is identified and measured, you will end up with an increase contrast, because you will provide a higher weighted of the low energy photons, which will convey the photoelectric effect. So that means that you will increase your contrast to noise ratio, or the contrast is highly dependent on the attenuation, but first you will end up with a more attenuating tissue than conventional CT. So it's really important, because detection is the key for early diagnosis of a lesion, of a disease. It's dead. Okay. So detection. So we talk about So it will end up also by increasing the contrast, and the way we will look here at the contrast is the way the metric, the task-based, the model observator task-based is doing. So we saw earlier the noise power spectrum, the TTF evaluation, and now you take all these parameters and you use this these formulas that I cannot explain, of course, but at the end it is interesting because it shows you the detectability index. So detectability index, this is a calculation from this task-based model observer. So it has been validated with the radiologist community. That means it's a model observer that simulates the ability of a radiologist to see a lesion. So the higher the D prime or the detectability is, the easier you will detect a lesion. And it is interesting because it is highly dependent on the TTF and the NPS, and also that means that it's the figure of merit to assess the performance of a CT and, for example, the spectral photocounting CT. So you see that we have the detectability index for high contrast. It is 350 HU contrast tissue, and you also have for low contrast, which is 40 HU at 2 millimeters. So these clinical tasks are coronary artery disease. And you see that using photocounting CT, it is improved by 2 times, and here by more than 2 times, and it ends up by improving your detection of this plaque. So does everyone see the plaque? The plaque. So the plaque here, you should look for a highly dense plaque. So look at this coronary artery disease. This is a patient that was suffering from a coronary artery disease. And we scan on the spectral photocounting and the energy integrated detector CT. And what you can see is that this small lesion here, it's highly dense in favor of calcification, while on energy integrated detectors, it was lower dense. And this is problematic because you can misdiagnose with other tissues, such as iodine, for example. So this was the high dense plaque. Now what about the low dense plaque? So the low dense plaque, we should turn off the lights, but the fact is, we should turn off the light. You will see that it boosts completely the visualization. Let's do that. Okay. Do you see it? Not any, no? It's boosting. No, we don't see quite well. It's boosting the visualization of this soft plaque, which was a culprit lesions. So it changes the outcomes for the patients. Okay. So detectability, I show you this is this model observer that has been validated, can be used to assess the interest of spectral photocounting CT, and this is a study on virtual monoenergetic images. I talked about this earlier. The problem with dual energy CT is that these images are suffering from limitation when it comes to low energy. And you see that using spectral photocounting CT, it will increase the image quality at low energies. That means that you will gain even more with photocounting CT for this type of images. Okay, yeah, this is the gain for each energy we involve, and at the end, we saw that spectral photocounting, of course, is improving the spatial resolution for standard imaging, such as 70 keV, but also it can provide even more high spatial resolution and high detection for 40 keV. And this is important because you will end up with high attenuation, and you will see that for clinical application, this is changing the clinical routine. Okay. Still on impact on detectability, I want to highlight this. You see that this phantom is made of calcification from large to small. This is from 1 millimeter to 0.5 millimeter. And the difference also is the composition from high concentrated in hydroxyapatite and low concentration of hydroxyapatite. These are the calcification you can find within your coronary arteries or maybe my coronary arteries, and you need to assess it to diagnose or to prevent the coronary artery disease. And in fact, when you looked at this image, you see that photocounting CT is diagnosing more calcification, which means maybe treats or having a more precise diagnosis of this disease. And I said earlier that it also could be applied to lung, and this is an important finding, because here you have what we call the ground glass nodule that was seen only on spectral photocounting CT, which was also missed by standard CT. Okay, so I said that the most important and interesting part is this one, which is hidden in the multiple spectral discrimination of spectral photocounting CT. Indeed, this system is providing, we said, an energy resolving capabilities that will allow you to show some specific attenuation effect. And when it comes to put a new contrast agent or an atom within the body, you will see that with these capabilities, you will be able to show and to quantify. And in fact, you, with multi-energy with spectral photocounting CT, you will switch from a 2 material decomposition model to a 3 material composition model. And you can even more increase the number of bases as function of your energy windows. So we saw earlier that global attenuation is the sum of photoelectric and Compton effect, which can be resolved by using this equation with 2 and none. This is applying for photoelectric effect and Compton when there is no high dense material within the body. When it comes to look for a specific agent within the body with KH higher than the energy, you will see the energy of the X-ray, or I mean between the clinical range of energy, you will be able to identify the concentration and identify in a specific manner the contrast agent. So to be clear, the way we look at this 3D or 4D basis model is to identify the specific photoelectric effect around a contrast agent with the cage, which is the binding energy between the K shell and the nucleus. And we need to, it's about identifying this specifically. So how to do this? This is one way to look at this. So it's conventional CT where you have a reconstruction of the global attenuation. In comparison, contrary to this conventional imaging, when it comes to measuring the KH imaging, you will have in the projection domain 3 types of scinograms. So this is the scinograph of the material decomposition material basis we talked about earlier, water and iodine. But you will have also in the detection chain the identification of KH contribution, which is a photoelectric effect above or in between the clinical range of energies. So that means that you will be able to identify specifically a contrast agent based on its gauge that will show you some important important advantage. You see here our phantom with circular inserts. All of these inserts are showing the similar or same attenuation values, around 280 Hounsfield units. However, in this insert, we mixed two different contrast agents. So while conventional CT cannot show the specific imaging, using water and iodine images and cage imaging, you will be able to specifically show the iodine contents, which is decreasing in terms of concentration here, while you can show the specific images based on the cage of the gadolinium, which is in the clinical range of the X-ray energy with an increasing concentration within the tube. So it's important because this could not have been performed using the energy integrated detectors, and at the end you will have more understanding of your images, i.e. with these overlays that show you the different change in concentration. And even more of this qualitative aspect, you could do a quantitative analysis of these contrast agents, i.e., for example, for iodine and gadolinium, with a very high accuracy. You see here the root mean square error that is very low, close to 0, while the R square is very high, close from 1. So you have quantification capabilities from 0 to 8 milligram per milliliter, which is the clinical range of contrast agent used routinely, and you have also with really a high agreement. Okay, so that means that in terms of advantage and limitation, we saw that you improve the intrasect spatial resolution, you reduce the electronic noise, you improve the contrast, you perform a more accurate sampling of the transmitted spectrum, you identify the photoelectric effect of a contrast agent around its gauge energies that show you qualitative and quantitative capabilities, and at the end you provide an unprecedented specific and quantitative imaging of one or two contrast agents. However, it's an emerging technology, and that's why there is an important need of development and validation. And we'll go there to current and then to perspective clinical applications. Okay, so now we talk about technology, and here that study from colleagues in Utrecht is important because it shows you the clinical benefits of virtual monoenergic images. We saw that at low energy you increase your attenuation, and in fact you increase your attenuation and you increase your contrast, and this is important because here what you see, it's conventional imaging contrast to noise ratio within the aorta using contrast agents. This is the reference. This is more than 100 million CT per year, maybe probably even more. But when you come to spectral CT imaging, either dual or multi-energy CT, you see that you can achieve the same contrast to noise ratio by using more than 60% less concentration of contrast agents. That means that in terms of buying contrast agent, in terms of eco-responsibility of your contrast agent, in terms of medical health economy, you will have a huge impact, an important impact in terms of with spectral CT imaging. So this is interesting because still with this proof of evidence, some people using spectral CT do not change their current clinical practice, which is not the case in our hospital, because we usually routinely perform coronary angiography, CT angiography here, and you see that on this left-hand side and right-hand side, you see that the image quality is the same. The attenuation is the same in the coronary arteries. And it's It's funny because it's the same while we decrease by 2 times the flow rate and the contrast agent's volume. And this is the same because here we use conventional CT, and here on the left-hand side we use virtual monoenergetic image to increase the iodine attenuation. So you see that spectral CT imaging is important in terms of reduction of contrast agent load, which is really important for the pharmaceutical and for other aspects of medical economic health. Important point also is that the radiologists that read the images said that the diagnostic accuracy was the same between those images. So this is important. What about clinical applications that needs quantification? So spectral CT imaging, we saw, can quantify the contrast agent distribution with some limitation, like bone contamination. Anyway, when you talk about the brain, you don't have usually bone inside the brain. So you see that here, this in 2 regions of interest, you have different concentration of iodine. So my question might be to those who perform brain imaging: why is there a difference in terms of quantification of iodine between this region of interest and this one? Do you know why? Look at the location of the ROI. The ROI here is in the white matter, and here in the gray matter. Usually we need more oxygen in the gray matter. You agree? So that means we have more vascularization, and what you see here, it's a quantitative imaging that is showing you the functional physiology of the brain, i.e. more concentration of blood provided by here the quantification of iodine within the gray matter in comparison to the white matter. Anyway, it still can be faced. It's not flawless because you see that in this study, you see that you have a dependence of the accuracy as function of the concentration of iodine, and the lower the concentration of iodine is, and the higher the relative bias in terms of quantification is. So you see that there is a dependence between quantification, iodine concentration, and also radiation dose here, which is shown as different curves. But anyway, spectral CT is providing finally quantification capabilities that cannot provide conventional CT. But it's not the only advantage of current spectral CT imaging. It's also to provide functional imaging of disease. And this point is really, really important. I said many times that CT is about morphology, but it's not about morphology anymore with spectral CT. Now it's about functional assessment. What is functional assessment or functional imaging? This is the visualization of the organ function. It's really important. If the myocardium doesn't function, doesn't work, you are dead. For the brain, if it doesn't work, you are dumb. You see, it's really important. Yeah, it comes like this. The fact is, functional assessment is really important, and this is the clinical element technology of CT. That's why I will try to highlight this functional aspect of CT, spectral CT imaging, and to show you. What is based on here? It's based on the quantification of iodine, specific visualization of iodine. This is not another type of images. This is the iodine image. The only difference here is that we injected the patient at a specific time, and this specific time is a surrogate marker of this nuclear imaging called perfusion scintigraphy. And this one is a perfusion single photon emission computed tomography. So basically the patient is get injection of a contrast agent, a radioisotope. It's a macroaggregated albumin. And then he has to wait 45 minutes. It will spread into the lungs, will be stuck in the capillaries, and will show you as this map of perfusion. And in this patient, the perfusion seems homogeneous. How can a nuclear imaging show you the homogeneous distribution? He has to perform a morphology acquisition. So he's performing even more a CT here. And this CT is performed not in an expiration or an inspiration, it just performed like without any breath holding. That means that you have this blurry distribution of isotope within the lungs with some spatial misregistration. But this is not the case with CT. CT is one shot with iodine injection, with high resolution, with no problem about misregistration, because all the information are in pixels. You have either the morphologic aspect, a high resolution visualization of the lung parenchyma, or you have the distribution of the iodine, which has been demonstrated to be a surrogate marker of this. Anyway, we are still doing both for a patient before surgery or for some diseases. But what is interesting is that in my clinical practice, now I have validated this map using spectroscopy imaging, we can discover new things. And we were the first at discovering this aspect of COVID. I talk about this during the roundtable this afternoon, but it's really important. Because this patient is suffering in the first phase, in the first week of SARS-CoV-2, he's suffering from huge respiratory syndrome. He was in the intensive care unit with a mask, really high concentrated oxygen mask. And the problem is that the lung parenchyma, the morphology aspect of the lung was the same before having this respiratory syndrome and after. It did not change any at all. So look at the functional imaging. And this is important here, is that when we look to the functional imaging, which is the iodine distribution, we observe really important fact within the lung. So first of all, within the lungs, there is a complex interaction between ventilation and perfusion. If you have an area of the lung that is low ventilated, I mean you have a pneumonia, the vascularization should decrease. That means that you will have less blood in the disease. The problem with COVID is that the virus was creating a sort of inflammatory state that completely dysfunctionalize or completely interact with the physiology of the lung. And instead of having lower perfusion in this area, COVID-19 was making an increased perfusion in this area. And this was only seen with perfusion or functional visualization. This patient, he could not go through a PET imaging or nuclear imaging. He was completely dying on the scanner, clearly. So you see one of the strengths of CT here. But what is important here is that we saw that in this area, so this is the black arrow, you have in this ground glass opacities, you have the improvement of increase in perfusion blood volume. And that means that in low ventilated areas where you have low concentration of oxygen and high concentration of carbon dioxide, you will have more change in the circulation. So at the end, the patient, they get concentration, a lot of concentration of oxygen, but it did not make through this shunting effect. And this is important because without this combination between morphology and functional that was only provided by spectroscopy imaging, you could not think about changing the oxygenation therapy or using corticosteroid in order to treat inflammation. And but I will skip. But what is also important is that, and really important, is that complete change in the second phase. After 10 days, you see there is no more ground glass opacities. Now you have what we call consolidation. And in consolidation, you don't have increase, you have decrease. And decrease, it is interesting, because decrease of perfusion blood volume was associated with necrosis of the vascularization, and at the end, it led to what we call the pulmonary embolism. Anyway, so without perfusion imaging, we could not understand the disease course, and this discourse, I like this graph because this course is some patient really, really, you have to believe me, really suffering from oxygenation. And in fact, the more they had ground glass here, the higher the PBV was, and the more they had consolidation at the second phase, the lower the PBV was. And it's really important because it changed the way to understand the disease course of a patient. So this point is about functional imaging, and the last point of current clinical application is that also using spectral CT imaging, you can think about having a one-stop shop modality. I know all of the users of CT, MRI, and so on say, well, we want a one-stop shop, the Couteau Suisse for Matthias. But of course, Couteau Suisse won't work anyway. I'm showing this slide because I put it in an eco-responsibility course. It's funny now we are talking about green radiology. It's really important, yes. But and as a green radiology, I was saying, okay, so now what if we delete MRI? What if delete invasive right heart catheterization? And what if we delete nuclear imaging? So here I'm showing 3 studies that are providing evidence that it could be not avoiding, but it could be a substitute for these modalities. It's interesting because we have here one more argument, not about cost, not about detection of lesions. It's about eco-responsibility. It's interesting. Okay, I hope I'm not making you sleep, but I will finish, sorry, by the most important. I said always most important, but this is incremental now application. No, it's not the most important. It's incremental. You will have a disruptive after. I will skip really fast this because, so do you see? Yeah, you might see this one is a volunteer and he's smoking some cigars sometimes. He has been scanned on the left side and scanned on the right-hand side. Do you see the difference? You see the white arrow. Okay, so for the same acquisition, for the same, let's say, parameters, you see one bronchiole that you would never think about, this one. And it is important, this is the small airways, and small airways are the burden for the small inflammation in small airway burdens. Inflammation in small airways are the burden of chronic obstructive pulmonary artery disease. And one more important thing is you see clearly this shoulder within the wall of these airways. So finally, you see that a cigar is also causing some pulmonary damage. He was not very happy when we diagnosed this, and the volunteer. But you see, you can depict, and then the conclusion will be how to understand this. But how to understand this? I'm sorry, because there are some, you need to turn off the light when you're, okay. Oh yeah. So yeah, look at this one. So this here. So this patient, it's a young woman, she's coughing and she has systemic sclerosis, and she will die, unfortunately, from the lung and not from the skin. Because when they had an interstitial lung disease, they have, so the earlier the treatment you use, the more the prognosis is increased. And in fact, here in that patient, you will never think about lesion here, and lesion here. And that change the delay of the treatment, and I will probably change the prognosis of this patient. So it was about detection. Now it's about quantification. You see, it is interesting. This is a solid nodule. This one is 3D printing. And when you scan on CT, high-resolution CT, you see some steps. You see as well steps with photocounting CT, but less. And in fact, it comes with a decrease of the partial volume effect. So you have at the end, for this nodule, a decrease of 25% of the volume with SPCT. And interesting, because now we are talking about lung screening strategy, annual scanner, biannual, and so on. And when we talk about percentage of evolution, 25 is very high. And what is funny, so we have a decrease here, and so this is the case of this nodule on the left-hand side with high resolution and right-hand side spectral photocontincity. But it's funny because when it comes to low contrast nodule, such as Grand Glass, this woman is a young woman, we follow her for this lesion. When you see that lesion, when it comes to standard CT and to high spectral photocontincity, now you're not decreasing, but you are increasing the volume of this nodule because you are increasing the contrast to noise ratio, and you are increasing also, you are decreasing also the partial volume effect, which is around and generally decrease the volume of the nodule because of the air around. So it's important, and it will change the way we are looking at lesion, and it will change also the way we are quantifying a lesion. This is the same case from earlier. This is different. I just apply a 3D volume rendering, and you see the lesion here that you don't see on the left-hand side. All right, so this one, it's so this one is an easy clinical task. This is a high contrast task. This is a stent. So stent is really important in clinical cardiology. And you see that this stent scan on a standard CT and spectral photocontincity. You see that with spectral photocontincity, you are completely seeing all the architecture and even more the calcification around. And this is of clinical impact because when you have this calcification, you cannot apply correctly the stents, and it will lead to complications, to thrombosis. And what is interesting is that at the end, and we show that with Guillaume Farny. He went for a research fellow, and now he's working in Lausanne. And we show that with photocontincity, we were able to provide the same image quality and the same information, even more having additional information in comparison to invasive coronary angiography and invasive optical coherence technique, which is today the really high-resoluted invasive modality imaging. So this patient with this technology will be now follow with photocontincity, i.e. a non-invasive imaging modality. So it's really important because for this technique you have to increase your catheter, which is of high risk of complication. You can have a coronary dissection, you can have a bleeding at the radial artery. So it's a really huge impact in terms of quality for the patient. So you see that there are many impacts, and I think that spectral photocontincity will have an impact in all the body, from this finger to the hair. I don't know if we can do hair imaging, we'll see. And in order to provide earlier detection, more precise, more reliable, and substitutive. However, there is still a need for updating the workflow because it will increase the performance of your workflow. It will increase a lot the memory need and so on. And also we need to retrain the semiology. We're going to see things we have never seen. We also going to see things we have never seen. This is just a fun slide. You have to find Charlie. You know all Charlie. So Charlie has been eaten by the crocodile from Egypt. And we scan it on spectral photocontincity in order to increase the spatial resolution and to look for Charlie. And he was, you see here, within the crocodile. So the crocodile during Egyptian period was sacred, and he was sacrificed after a huge meal. But high resolution show a really nice visualization of some animals that were digested by the crocodile. Okay, groundbreaking application, and this is it. Groundbreaking application. This is the most interesting, and we talk about ERC starting grant, and this is what enables me to get this grant. Is to provide it's to provide specific and quantitative imaging of contrast agents. So you see here it's a funny phantom with different material in each insert, gadolinium, calcium, water, iodine, calcium, and you see that in this experimental setup you can depict all of this and differentiate between each of them. So you can think about using different contrast agents within the same voxel. We saw how, And the problem is, and this needs to be understood, is that you need to detect, to have an atom with a cage within the X-ray range from 40 to 120 keV or 140 keV. And you see that iodine, which is a commonly used contrast agent in CT, has a cage at 33 keV. So 33 is below the minimal energy of the X-ray tube. That means that iodine cannot provide cage capabilities. And this is an important limitation, but also this is an important opportunity to develop and validate dedicated cage contrast agents. And this is the main aspect of my research, is to work with biochemists and to develop these new contrast agents. So you will have, this might be the first evidence of dynamic in vivo cage imaging. This was with limited sensitivity, high noise, and so on, but still in this rabbit we injected gold-based contrast agents that allows you to see on the right-hand side the specific distribution, really fast, yes, but the specific distribution of the gold. What is interesting here, you don't see any bone, you don't see any muscle, you don't see fat, you don't see any cross-contamination of any tissue except the signal of gold. And this will end up with a functional assessment of the lung, of the myocardium, of whatever you think. What is interesting here is that with these images, you have to tune your contrast agents and to tune as function of your application. And this is application. It's we are doing each day millions of, each year millions of CT of the liver. This is the liver of a rabbit. This is the same size of a baby, and this is the same anatomy. And this is interesting because when it comes to do liver imaging, we are doing 3 shots, 3 acquisitions. And in that setup, I injected 2 contrast agents at different time, so I can have in one acquisition 3 information. You have here the information of the arterial compartment, and you have here the information of the venous compartment. You are looking here for a non-contrast imaging, but this is not the main point here. But interesting, now you can do even more than one color imaging. You can do a bicolor imaging, and you will change the way to look at the organs. You will also change the way you look at the some physiopathological process, and this is an important point of spectral CT imaging, because using dedicated contrast agents that is targeting to a specific task, which is generally a molecular task, such as the macrophage here, you will be able to provide a specific quantitative high-resolution map of the molecular burden you are looking for. And this study is important, really important. This is the starter point of how you can use spectral photocounting CT to quantify with high accuracy in comparison to method of reference. Here it's the inductively coupled plasma ES optical emission spectroscopy, which is the method of reference, and with very high agreement, and also with high agreement with transmission TEM, transmission electron microscopy. So you see that with CT, with this CT, spectral photocounting CT, and with a dedicated contrast agent, so this is gold nanoparticles that have been uptaken by the macrophages, you will have a nice map of the liver. This is the liver of the rabbit. Usually humans, you have this part, but rabbit, it's missing. I don't know why. Maybe it's easier to lengthen the size. Anyway, and you have the spleen and you have the bone marrow. Why? Because all of the organs are part from the mononuclear phagocyte system, which is the system that uptake the nanoparticles. But it is interesting because it can be of really important medical value when it comes to, for example, atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis, this is a disease that is mainly an inflammation disease. In the atherosclerotic plaque, which you cannot see, we will see after, you will have an important macrophage burden that is known as a factor of risk of rupture. And by using gold nanoparticles, as we saw earlier, you will be able to provide a specific imaging map of the macrophage burden in a quantitative way, while you can show in that setup, in the same time, the visualization of the lumen. So you have the morphology and the functional imaging. So at the end, you have this comprehensive imaging of atherosclerosis. I'm about 92 slides, normal. I'm sorry, it's really long. But we are at the end. And this is important because for two aspects, because I think this is, so it's a patent, it has been finalized 2 weeks ago after 1 year, and it's important patent because this is the first one showing the interest for spectral photoquanticity. Look at this one. So we worked in a French group with this group, really bright guys, biochemists, Olivier Thimand, François Lux, and his team. And it's interesting because they have designed a nanoparticle based on gadolinium, but it can be filled with other atoms. And it is interesting because their contrast agents can clearly be cleared out from the body. And as a matter of fact, now it's a spin-off startup, TeraGeeks, that is just in clinical phase 2. So it's a really important contrast agent. And look at what you can see from this. If you inject in this rabbit with a clinical compatible concentration, you have the KH map of the lung, of the myocardium also, but of the lung here, which here is the first high-resolution quantitative and specific imaging using KH imaging. So this is the starting point of a new way to look at imaging. We already talked about functional imaging, but now we have the dedicated contrast agents that can be cleared out from the body, which can be also a limitation of current contrast agents. And as a matter of fact, I'm showing here the whole body imaging. So it's a one shot, 3 seconds acquisition time in the rabbit, 10 seconds after injection in the ear vein. And you see that you have a visualization of the aortic root, of the pulmonary arteries, of the lung microvascularization, which is a surrogate marker of lung perfusion. And you see also the disease in that rabbit, which is an atherosclerotic rabbit model with small aneurysm here in that part. So this is, I'll say, really a bright future for clinical translation of KH imaging, and also for the versatility of the spectral photoquanticity imaging that can be used either for increasing the spatial resolution. You see here some really current clinical application, I would say incremental, by using lower X-ray dose and higher contrast, but it can be used for disruptive groundbreaking such as dynamic KH imaging, such as the molecular KH imaging, the specific and quantitative multicolor imaging. It can be used also for many aspects, cell tracking, and so on, and so on. And most importantly, today, I'm happy to share with you that it also can be used for providing within the lung, for the lung disease imaging, a single breath-hold imaging of the ventilation and the perfusion using 2 contrast agents. And this is, I said, really important because this is the starter point of this research, I would say, that will start in January. Okay, so this is the end. Thank you for listening me all that time. You know, frustration is somehow creating desire. So that's why I'm saying that, because currently, in terms of spectral photoquanticity, you need to be patient still. For KH imaging, you need to be patient because Philips is has pioneered this development. This is what we are doing with them. And Philips is still in the box of clinical prototypes, so it's not now. It's not FDA approved. Mars is not FDA approved, and it's a small collimation. So I'm showing here all the photoquantic systems available officially. You have GE Healthcare and Canon Healthcare that are moving fast and might be FDA also in the 2 years, 2 next years, while Siemens has already get clearance from FDA in 2021 with high resolution and different performances. There is this one, this small one, which is Samsung, but I think we should forget it because this is only for brain and you move the photocounting CT, so it's not for whole body imaging. So yeah, you need to be patient in parallel in the time, but the publications are usually increased, and you know why? Because this is of high potential for breaking the limits of conventional imaging. You're providing an incremental, a paradigm shift, offering new application and biology, chemistry, and so on. High potential, and at the end, you want to save life. Thank you for your attention.